I inherited a $900K estate, so I moved it fast before my family could get it. When they showed up claiming it was theirs, they had no idea I was already steps ahead. My name is Aiden. I'm 32 and I'm the kind of guy most of my family assumed would just roll over when things got messy. The quiet one, the agreeable one, the one who never makes a scene. And maybe I used to be like that. But when my grandparents passed and left their entire estate to me, the house, the savings, and the shares worth just under $900,000, something inside me shifted. I started paying attention. I started listening more closely. And most importantly, I started planning because I knew exactly what kind of people I was related to. My brother Tyler is 3 years younger than me. Flashy, loud, charismatic, the kind of guy who can lie to your face and still get you to loan him $5,000 for a sure investment. He'd gotten away with so much over the years. Credit cards in mom's name, a borrowed car that mysteriously vanished, and every single time mom bailed him out, said he was just figuring things out. But me, I was always expected to be the responsible one, the backup plan, the safety net, and I was done playing that role. When Grandpa passed away 2 years ago, a year after Grandma, he left the estate solely to me. I wasn't surprised. I had been their caretaker when no one else bothered to call, much less visit. I drove them to their appointments, handled the grocery runs, managed the never-ending paperwork. Tyler, he'd show up on Christmas morning, take photos for Instagram, and vanish until the next holiday. But when the will was read and my name was the only one on it, I saw the look my mom gave me. That tight-lipped, disappointed twist of her face, like I had taken something that wasn't mine. That was the moment I realized the storm was coming. The house was the big piece. A gorgeous old Victorian with deep red bricks, tall windows, and ivy crawling up the sides like something out of a movie. It was a historic property passed down through 3 generations, and my grandparents had kept it in near-perfect condition. The neighborhood had exploded in value over the last decade. Every house around it had been gutted and flipped, but my grandparents never sold, and now it was mine. I didn't move in right away. I kept my apartment across town and quietly worked on getting everything in order. I had the house appraised, talked to an estate attorney, and set up a trust. Not just for the house, for everything. I didn't tell anyone. Not Tyler, not mom, no one. I kept the original deed in a secure location, and I placed the entire property, title, assets, savings, into an irrevocable trust with me as the trustee. I even moved the utilities under a business name tied to the trust. It cost some extra fees, but I didn't care. I knew my family too well. I knew they'd try something. For a while, it was quiet. Too quiet. Tyler texted a few times asking if he could use the pool. It doesn't have one. Mom dropped hints about how unfair it was to leave everything to just one person. She even said, "Well, your brother was always Grandpa's favorite, you know," as if that meant something. I just nodded and changed the subject. I didn't argue. I didn't correct them. I let them believe I was being naive, that I hadn't taken precautions. The tension really kicked off last month. Tyler started posting vague stories on social media. Big things coming, next chapter loading, that kind of nonsense. Then one Saturday, I was at the house doing yard work. Nothing fancy, just trying to keep up the landscaping when I saw Mom's car pull into the driveway. Tyler hopped out first, all grins and sunglasses like he was arriving at a photo shoot. Mom followed, carrying a clipboard and smiling like she was about to cut a ribbon on a new property development. "Hey man," Tyler said, clapping me on the shoulder. "We've got some news." I just raised an eyebrow. Mom, stepped forward. "We spoke to a lawyer. It turns out the house should have gone to both of you. Your grandfather made a mistake not updating the will after your grandmother passed. But don't worry, we handled it." I stared at her. Handled what exactly? Tyler pulled out a folded paper from his back pocket and waved it in the air. "We had the house title transferred to my name. It's already done. You're going to need to be out by Friday. But no hard feelings, right? We'll give you time to grab your stuff." I didn't say anything for a moment. Just looked at them one then the other, taking in their smug faces. The pure audacity. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't panicking. Honestly, I almost laughed because they really thought I was that stupid. I gave them a smile. Small, polite, the kind that makes people nervous. "You really think I'd let that happen?" Tyler laughed like I told a joke. "It's already happening, dude. You've been living in Fantasyland for too long." Mom stepped in, softening her tone like she thought it would help. We're not trying to be cruel, Aiden. It's just practical. Tyler can manage the property. Maybe flip it. You've got your own place anyway. This way, everyone wins. I didn't argue. I just nodded slowly and said, got it. 2 days later, they came back, this time with a moving truck and a pair of hired movers. I'd been expecting it. They pulled into the driveway like they owned the place, laughing and shouting at each other. Tyler was in the passenger seat, sipping a coffee, and Mom was directing the movers toward the front door. But then they saw the porch. I was standing there, arms crossed, beside a tall man in a navy suit. He was holding a thick folder and wore a badge clipped to his belt. The folder had my trust's name on the front, a name they didn't recognize yet. The badge was real, the suit was real, and the man, he was from the County Office of Property Records. They froze. Tyler stepped out first, confused. What's going on? I didn't say a word. The man in the suit did. The man beside me, Mr. 11, cleared his throat with the calm authority of someone who has done this too many times to be rattled by theatrics. He held the folder under one arm and glanced down at the paper in his hand before speaking in a firm but neutral tone. Are you Tyler Green? He asked. Tyler frowned, clearly thrown off by the question. Yeah. Who's asking, Mr. Levin stepped forward slightly. I'm with the County Office of Property Records. I'm here on behalf of the legal trustee of the East Thornhill Estate. That's this property. He pointed behind him at the house. I have documentation showing the deed has been held in a trust since April of last year under the management of Aiden Green. Any claims made regarding the property's ownership since that date, including a fraudulent title transfer, are not just invalid, but criminally prosecutable. Tyler's face drained a full shade of color. Fraudulent? He muttered, looking to Mom. What is he talking about? Mom stepped forward, lips tight. There must be some mistake. We had a lawyer look at the old deed. It was still in Grandpa's name. We assumed. You assumed wrong, I said, finally breaking my silence. I never left the property in my name directly. It's owned by a trust. That's why you couldn't find any record in the public logs. You went to some shady title mill and tried to fake a transfer based on an outdated document. Mr. Levin nodded. I've already filed a fraud report on the attempted title claim. Normally, we'd send a warning first. But given the circumstances, bringing movers, threatening occupancy, trying to evict the legal trustee, we're skipping straight to enforcement. Tyler blinked. Enforcement? I turned slightly toward him and spoke more plainly. It means if you set one foot in this house without my permission again, you're trespassing. And if you try to tamper with the trust or any of its assets, you're looking at charges. Multiple. For a long, awkward second, no one said a word. The movers were standing halfway between their truck and the porch, looking at each other like they'd walked into a domestic minefield. One of them coughed and slowly started backing away toward the van. Tyler finally found his voice. You're seriously doing this to family? My voice was calm. Too calm. Family. You showed up here with a forged title and a moving crew. You tried to steal my home. The one thing Grandpa and Grandma wanted me to have. Don't talk to me about family. Mom's jaw clenched. They were confused, Aiden. They didn't understand. No, I said sharply, cutting her off. You didn't understand. You thought I'd be the same pushover I was at 20. The kid you could guilt into giving up his weekend to babysit Tyler's drama, or float alone, because you needed it just this once. But I'm not that kid anymore. I learned, I listened, and I prepared, Mr. Levin added, flipping through the folder. Also, just so it's clear, we've alerted the local precinct. If either of you attempt to return under the guise of any property claim, there will be a file ready to go, civil and criminal. Tyler's eyes flashed, but he said nothing. He turned to the movers and snapped. We're leaving now. He didn't look at me again. Mom lingered for half a second, her mouth slightly open like she wanted to say something. Maybe one last manipulation attempt, but nothing came out. She followed him without another word. The truck pulled out of the driveway and I watched the taillights disappear down the hill. It was quiet again. That heavy kind of quiet that falls after a confrontation that's been building for years. Mr. Levin handed me a copy of the filed report and said, call if they come back. I thanked him and after he left, I just stood there for a while on the same porch where I used to sit with Grandpa and listen to him talk about knowing your people, not just their words, but their patterns, their habits. He used to say, don't judge people by what they say in a moment. Judge them by what they do when they think you're not watching. He was right. I had watched and I'd finally acted. But that wasn't the end, because 3 days later I received a letter, one typed formal and signed from a different lawyer, one hired by my mother. In it, she claimed emotional distress and argued that as a direct descendant, she had a moral and familial right to a portion of the estate. She demanded compensation for the mental anguish caused by being excluded, and attached to it a list of what she considered reasonable reparations: $150,000 in cash, joint ownership of the family home, and a monthly allowance until further notice. I stared at the paper, numb at first. Then my hands began to shake, not with fear, with fury, because she wasn't finished. And now, neither was I. I must have read that letter 6 times in silence before setting it down on my desk. The first few readings, I tried to make sense of it to believe that maybe she didn't mean it the way it sounded. But by the 6th read, there was no more room for denial. My mother, my own mother, had put her name on legal stationery and tried to bill me for not letting her and Tyler steal what my grandparents entrusted to me. It wasn't even the money that got to me. It was the sheer entitlement. The gall to call this whole thing a misunderstanding one day and then send me a formal demand for $150,000 the next, like this was just some business dispute between strangers. And the phrase that stuck in my mind, echoing louder than anything else in the letter, was familial obligation. As if loyalty only flowed one way, upward toward them. As if I was born to give and they were born to take. I didn't respond immediately. I knew better than to react emotionally. I called Mr. Levon, who put me in touch with a sharp estate attorney named Sonia Cruz. She was in her early 40s, soft-spoken but razor-focused, the kind of person who didn't bother bluffing because she didn't need to. I gave her everything. The trust documents, the letter from my mom's lawyer, even screenshots of texts and social media posts from Tyler's Little Next Chapter campaign. Within a day, Sonia had filed a formal cease and desist against both of them. The message was clear. The trust was airtight, legally shielded, and they had no standing. But Sonia didn't stop there. She looked deeper. She discovered that Tyler had forged multiple signatures when attempting the bogus title transfer. He'd even used a notary stamp, fake of course, and filed it through a sketchy online registry in another state, hoping it wouldn't be noticed in our county records. Sonia contacted a fraud investigator with the county DA's office. Turns out they were already looking into that registry for other forged filings. Tyler had just unknowingly become the low-hanging fruit on their case file. I still hadn't told them I knew. I figured if they wanted to keep pushing, I'd let them keep digging the hole. And dig they did. 2 weeks after the cease and desist, I got another letter. This one was less formal. It came directly from my mother, typed, but clearly her voice full of passive-aggressive phrases like, "After all I've done for you, you were always the quiet one and I raised you to be better than this." She ended it with, "You can end this all right now by just doing the right thing. Family should never need lawyers to settle what love and understanding can resolve." I didn't even bother responding. Sonia advised me not to. Instead, I forwarded the letter to her, and she added it to the growing file we were assembling, one that could be used if we needed a restraining order later on. And then came the kicker. One morning, I walked out to my mailbox and found a folded flyer stuck into the door handle. It wasn't addressed, just jammed into the gap like some kind of high school prank, but I recognized the handwriting instantly. Tyler's. The note said, "Hope you're enjoying playing King of the Castle. Just remember who's really got your back when the money runs dry." I laughed. Not a big laugh, not loud, just one of those quiet, tired laughs that comes out when you realize someone really doesn't know how far you've outgrown them. I took the note inside, scanned it, and added it to the file. But I also made a decision right then. I wasn't just going to defend myself anymore. I was going to push back. Tyler was already being looked at for real estate fraud. But Sonia pointed out that if we could prove intentional malice or harassment, we could escalate things. And while criminal courts would do their part, there was another arena where Tyler could really be hurt. His credit, his record, his job. He'd recently landed a position at a boutique real estate firm, one of those flashy places that put more effort into their Instagram account than their compliance policies. I did a little digging of my own, and found out they prided themselves on transparency and ethical property transfers, which made me wonder, would they be proud of someone who tried to steal a house with forged paperwork? But I didn't act impulsively. I waited because then something strange happened, something I hadn't anticipated. My cousin Megan, who I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out to me out of the blue. She messaged me on Facebook. "Hey, can we talk? Your mom's been calling people in the family saying some things. I figured I should let you know." We met for coffee the next morning. Megan was always the no-nonsense one, straight shooter. And that hadn't changed. She showed me texts, voicemails, even a group chat with two of her other cousins. Turns out my mother had started spreading a story. According to her, I had manipulated Grandpa in his final years, convinced him to change the will while he was mentally declining. She even hinted that I'd taken advantage of him emotionally, legally, maybe even medically. It was an all-out smear campaign. I felt sick. That's when I knew this wasn't about the house anymore or the money or even Tyler. This was about control. My mother couldn't stand that I'd said no, that I'd protected something, anything, from her grasp. And now she was going to try to ruin me for it. Megan looked at me across the table and said, "I don't believe her. Neither do Jamie or Chris. But she's not going to stop. She's calling everyone." I nodded slowly, heart beating harder than I wanted it to. "Thanks for telling me." I didn't sleep much that night, because that was the moment I realized if she was willing to lie to the entire family about me, to assassinate my character just to pressure me into giving up what was legally mine, then I had to be willing to finish this. Not just for me, but to make sure she and Tyler never did this to anyone else again, and what I did next. Let's just say it didn't end with lawyers. I spent the next 2 days in my study planning. By now, the trust was protected from any legal angle. That part was secure, but their smear campaign was already infecting the extended family. My cousin Megan's warning had come just in time, but the damage was spreading fast. I started getting vague texts from distant relatives. Things like, "Just wanted to check in" or "Heard some stuff. Hope it's not true." It was clear my mother had been busy. She wasn't just trying to take the estate. She wanted to destroy my reputation so thoroughly that no one would ever believe my side of the story. And if I let that happen, I knew what would come next. Pressure from relatives, whispered guilt, gaslighting from every corner of the family tree. Eventually, they'd try to force me to be the bigger person and hand over something for the sake of peace. I could see the trap they were setting. I wasn't going to walk into it, so I built my own. Sonia, my attorney, helped me prepare a legal declaration, a statement of facts supported by all the evidence we'd gathered. The forged title application, the fake notary stamp, the letters, the attempted property seizure, and the smear campaign. I included scanned screenshots from Megan's messages, voicemails left by my mom calling me a greedy manipulator, and the copy of the lawyer's ridiculous demand for $150,000. But I didn't just file it away in a court office. I sent a clean, easy-to-read version to every relative my mom had called. I wrote a short message. "Hi, I know some things have been said recently, and before you draw any conclusions, I want you to have the facts backed by documents, not stories. I've attached everything you need to see. After this, I won't be discussing it again. If you believe me, great. If not, that's your choice. But at least you'll be making it with the full truth in front of you." Then I hit send to 27 contacts. The fallout was instant. Within hours, I got 5 replies from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Most were apologetic. A few were horrified. My Aunt Robin, who used to do on Tyler like he walked on water, called me that evening in tears. She had believed every word my mother said until she saw the forgery, the letter, the folder of proof. She said, "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Aiden, I'm so sorry. I didn't ask for apologies. I just told her I hoped she understood now why I'd done what I did." But not everyone reacted that way. 3 relatives, all on my mom's side, doubled down, claimed I had manipulated the narrative. One even accused me of making up the documents. I knew I couldn't win them all. But for every one of those, I had 5 more people reach out and say, "Thank you for telling the truth." Then came the part I'd been waiting for. I reached out to Tyler's boss anonymously at first. I submitted a tip through their internal ethics line, not just a vague warning, a full PDF report organized, labeled with exhibits. It included the attempted fraudulent transfer of the house, the misuse of legal documents, and the potential real estate crime he committed using their name and reputation. I thought maybe it would take a week. It took 2 days. Tyler's name was removed from the company's website by the end of the week, according to a contact of mine in the local real estate association. Someone I knew from college who now worked in compliance. The firm had launched an internal audit the moment they saw the complaint. they found other inconsistencies in Tyler's client files, too. He wasn't just fired. He was reported to the state board. His license was frozen pending investigation. He tried to call me the day it happened. 11 missed calls. I didn't answer a single one. That weekend, I saw a new post on his Instagram. A black screen with the words, "Some people will destroy your life and pretend they're the victim." He didn't name me, but he didn't have to. Everyone who mattered already knew the truth. But it wasn't over yet, because 2 days later, I got a formal notice from the county. A warrant was being issued. The forged title application had triggered legal consequences. Tyler was being charged with attempted property fraud and submitting falsified documents to a government agency. I stared at the notice for a long time, numb. This wasn't the ending I ever wanted. I didn't want to destroy him. I didn't want any of this, but he'd forced it. And now there were consequences. He was arraigned quietly. No headlines, no big scene, just a court date, a lawyer he couldn't afford, and a future full of legal headaches. He wouldn't go to prison. Probably just probation, fines, maybe community service. But the record would follow him. Jobs would be harder to find, trust harder to rebuild. And the next time he tried to rebrand himself as a savvy real estate guy, this would be the skeleton in the closet. As for my mother, she went silent after the evidence went public. Completely silent. She didn't reach out, didn't apologize, didn't ask for money again. But one afternoon, about 2 months later, I got a letter in the mail. Not from her attorney, a carefully worded note stating she was withdrawing all pending legal claims regarding the estate and respectfully requesting no further contact. In other words, she gave up. She knew she lost. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt free. That night, I went to the old Victorian and walked the hall slowly, barefoot on the hardwood floors. The air smelled faintly of cedar and old books. The house was quiet, peaceful, mine. I stood in the den where Grandpa used to sit in that big leather armchair and read the paper and whispered. I kept it safe just like I promised. I think he would have been proud. In the end, I didn't just keep the house. I kept my dignity. I kept my future. Tyler lost his career. My mother lost her narrative. And I gained something they never expected. The strength to stop being their victim. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the quiet one anymore.